The kind stranger, the space station was alive with noise. Travelers of many species rushed across the wide hall, carrying bags, tickets, and glowing devices. Announcements echoed through the speakers in dozens of languages, each calling passengers to different gates. Humans, aliens, merchants, and soldiers all moved together in a busy river of life. In the middle of this crowd, a small old alien stood alone. His clothes were torn, his hands shook, and his eyes looked tired. He walked slowly to the counter, holding a small bag close to his chest. The clerk looked down at him and asked for payment. The old alien reached into his bag and pulled out a few worn coins. The clerk frowned and shook his head, saying it was not enough. The alien spoke softly in a strange voice, trying to explain. But the clerk only grew impatient and waved him away. Other travelers behind began to complain, shouting for the line to move. The old alien bowed his head, ashamed, and stepped back. He turned as if to walk away, his shoulders heavy with defeat. From a short distance, a human man had been watching. He was young, carrying only a simple travel bag and a calm face. He saw the alien's trembling hands, and his heart felt heavy. Without thinking too long, the human walked to the counter. He placed his credit chip on the scanner and said to the clerk, "I'll pay for him." The clerk looked surprised, but accepted, and the ticket was printed. The old alien turned, his eyes wide. He stared at the human as if he could not believe what had just happened. The human handed him the ticket with a small smile. "It's yours," he said kindly. "Safe travels." For a moment, the old alien did not move. Then his lips trembled, and he whispered words in his own language. The words were strange, but his tone carried weight like a prayer or a blessing. He held the human's hand for a moment, his grip surprisingly strong for his weak body. Then, with slow steps, he walked away toward the departure gate. The crowd around barely noticed, but the human felt a strange chill. Something about the alien's eyes, when they looked at him, felt deeper than simple thanks. The human shrugged it off, telling himself he only helped someone in need. He turned to leave, but unease grew in his chest. Why had the alien's final words sounded almost like a warning? Why did it feel like invisible eyes were watching from somewhere far above? He sat down on a bench near the window, waiting for his own shuttle to arrive. The stars outside glittered, ships came and went, and the station shook with engines. He thought about home, about his journey, and about the old alien. It had only been a small act of kindness, nothing more. Yet the human could not stop replaying the scene in his mind. The look of fear mixed with relief on the alien's face would not leave him. Suddenly, the station lights flickered. An alarm began to ring across the hall. Voices shouted in panic, and guards rushed to their posts through the giant glass windows. Something massive was approaching. The human stood, his eyes wide as shadows covered the station. The crowd screamed, pointing to the dark void outside. There, breaking through the black of space, 3 enormous warships appeared. They were unlike anything the human had ever seen, sharp, glowing, and alive with strange energy. Symbols burned across their hulls, symbols that pulsed with power. The ships moved in perfect formation. Silent but threatening, even the strongest soldiers on the station looked nervous. The human froze, his heart pounding. The old alien's blessing echoed in his mind. Had this been a coincidence, or had the alien known this was coming? The ground shook as the warships drew closer. The crowd pressed back, whispering of invasion, whispering of war, and then, to the human's shock, armored alien soldiers began to march inside the station. Their eyes scanned the hall, ignoring the terrified crowd. Step by step, they moved forward, their weapons glowing, until finally, their leader pointed directly toward the human. Gasps filled the air. Why him? The human's breath caught as all eyes turned his way. In that instant, He realized his small act of kindness was about to change everything. Asterisk, the sudden arrival of the station shook as if the metal walls were alive. The alarm lights turned red. Flashing again and again, people ran in every direction, shouting in fear. Mothers grabbed their children, merchants left their goods, and guards shouted for order, but no one listened. Everyone knew what it meant when warships like those appeared. The human stood frozen near the window, his eyes wide on the three ships. They moved like predators, silent and slow, yet full of deadly power. Their surfaces glowed with shifting blue symbols, strange patterns that seemed alive. The human could not look away. It was like watching ancient gods descend from the sky. Suddenly, the massive doors of the docking bay opened. A smaller ship, sharp and silver, detached from the warship's belly and glided inside. It landed smoothly, its metal body humming like a living beast. The station guards raised their weapons, their voices trembling as they ordered the crowd to step back, but everyone was already pressed against the walls. Too afraid to breathe, the ramp of the alien vessel opened, and heavy footsteps echoed across the hall. Soldiers stepped out tall, armored, their helmets glowing faintly. Their armor was black, mixed with silver lines that pulsed like veins. Each soldier carried a weapon unlike anything seen before long. Curved, alive with blue fire, they marched in perfect rhythm, their presence colder than the vacuum outside. The human felt his legs weaken. These soldiers did not look like travelers. They looked like executioners. Whispers spread in the crowd. An invasion? Someone muttered. No. Another said, they're looking for someone. The soldier's leader stepped forward, his helmet split open. Revealing a face with dark gray skin and burning golden eyes, he scanned the hall. Slowly, his gaze sharp like a blade, and then, to the human's horror, the leader raised a hand and pointed directly at him. Gasps filled the station. The human's chest tightened. Why him? He had done nothing but buy a simple ticket for an old alien. He tried to step back, to hide among the crowd, but it was too late. The soldiers moved like hunters. Their steps heavy and sure. They ignored everyone else, pushing past. Guards and travelers as if they were shadows. The human's heart raced. His mind screamed at him to run, but his body was frozen, trapped by the golden eyes staring into his soul. The soldiers stopped in front of him. Forming a circle, the crowd held its breath. Weapons hummed softly, glowing brighter as if warning the human not to move. Then something strange happened. Instead of grabbing him or striking him down, the soldiers all lowered their weapons and dropped to one knee. The hall exploded with whispers. No, this cannot be. Why are they kneeling? To a human. Even the guards looked lost, unsure whether to fight or salute. The leader removed his weapon and placed it on the ground before the human. He lowered his head and spoke in a deep voice. The human could not understand the alien words, but their meaning was clear: respect, loyalty, or perhaps surrender. The leader was bowing to him. The human's mind spun. Why were they kneeling? Why him, of all people? His eyes darted across the crowd, searching for answers, and then he saw a familiar figure walking calmly from the corner of the hall. It was the old alien, no longer bent or trembling. His torn cloak dragged across the floor, but his steps were steady, full of strength. The crowd parted in silence as he approached. The human's stomach tightened. The old alien's eyes now burned with power, not weakness. It was as if he had shed one skin and revealed another. The soldiers rose quickly. When he passed, lowering their heads with deep respect, the human's heart pounded louder. He realized the truth. This was no poor traveler. This old alien was someone great, someone powerful, someone who carried the weight of stars on his shoulders. The alien stopped before the human, his gaze piercing yet calm. You, he said, in clear words, his voice deep and heavy. You showed kindness when no one else did. The human blinked, struggling to understand. The old alien reached out and touched his shoulder. Now the galaxy will know your face. The hall remained silent. The crowd unable to breathe, the warships outside hummed louder. As if waiting for their master's command, the humans stood frozen, trapped between fear and disbelief. What had he done? He only bought a ticket. Nothing more. Yet now, 3 elite warships had come, and soldiers had bowed to him, and the old alien's eyes promised that this was only the beginning. The revelation, the hall remained silent. The human stood at the center of armored soldiers who had bowed to him. All around, people pressed against the walls. Their eyes wide with shock, no one dared to move, no one dared to speak. Even the station guards, who only minutes ago shouted orders, now lowered their weapons in confusion. The old alien stood tall before the human. Gone was the weak, trembling figure from before. His back was straight, his eyes burned like twin suns. And his presence filled the hall with weight. The cloak that once seemed ragged now looked more like a veil hiding his true self. When he spoke, the sound carried across the station. Steady and powerful. This human, he said, his voice deep, chose kindness over ignorance. The crowd whispered in shock. Some asked each other who this alien really was. Others could not believe soldiers of such strength had bent their knees to a stranger. The old alien turned, lifting his hood, and pulling it back. Gasps filled the air. His head was marked with glowing symbols, lines carved into his skin that pulsed with blue fire. They were not scars. They were the signs of leadership, the marks of an elder, a royal, perhaps even something greater. The human stomach twisted as he realized the truth. This was no poor traveler, no lost wanderer. The old alien was someone powerful. Someone the warships outside belonged to. The man who had begged for a ticket was in fact the ruler of an empire. The alien looked back at the human, his golden eyes steady. You thought I was no one, he said slowly, but you chose to help anyway. The words echoed in the human's mind. He remembered the trembling hands, the soft voice, the feeling of pity. How could such a small choice, just buying a ticket, have led to this moment? The alien raised his hand, and the soldiers instantly lowered their weapons. The energy in their blades dimmed. The tension shifted. The crowd relaxed only slightly, though fear still clung to them. The alien continued, in my world, power is tested not by strength, but by compassion. He looked directly at the human, and you have passed a test without even knowing it. The human's lips parted, but no words came. He wanted to speak, to ask, but his throat was dry. What kind of test was this? Who had he really helped? And why did 3 elite warships stand outside, waiting like shadows? The old alien gestured, and one of the soldiers stepped forward. He carried a small device that projected a glowing image in the air. It showed entire planets, empires, fleets of ships, and battles fought in the stars. The image shifted to a throne, and there sat the same old alien, but dressed in robes of light. The crowd gasped again. Realization spreading quickly. He is the elder, someone whispered. The one who vanished, another said. Impossible. I thought he was only a story, but the proof was there before their eyes. The poor traveler was no beggar. He was the elder ruler of one of the most feared and respected alien civilizations. The human's mind spun faster and faster. If this alien was so important, then why had he been at the counter with no money? Why had he been abandoned and mocked by clerks like a common stranger? The elder answered as if reading his thoughts. I left my throne, he said, to see if kindness still lived in this galaxy. His eyes softened, though his presence was still heavy, and it was you, human, who showed it to me. The human stepped back slightly, his hands shaking. He was just one man, one traveler. How could his action carry such weight? He looked at the crowd, but they only stared at him as if he was no longer human, but something more. The elder extended his hand. "Come," he said. "Walk with me." The soldiers moved aside, forming a path, their eyes lowered in respect. The human hesitated, fear gripping his chest. If he walked with this elder, he would no longer be just himself. He would become part of something larger, something dangerous. Still, his feet moved, one step forward, then another. The elder smiled, faintly, as if satisfied. Together they walked toward the ramp of the silver vessel. The hall of the station remained in silence, thousands of eyes following them. The crowd knew history was changing before them. The human glanced once more at the great glass windows. The warships waited, their lights pulsing like hearts of giants. He felt the weight of destiny press against his shoulders. He had not asked for this, he had not chosen it, but it had chosen him. As he stepped onto the ramp, his thoughts returned to that single moment, the moment he had paid for a stranger's ticket. It seemed so small, yet it had brought him here, and now, he realized, there was no way back. The elder's voice echoed again, soft but sharp. "You have changed more than you know." The human's chest tightened. Something told him that this was only the beginning of a story far greater than he could imagine. The silver vessel's ramp closed with a deep metallic sound. The human stood inside, surrounded by walls of smooth black metal, glowing with thin streams of blue light. The air felt different, here heavy, humming with energy. Every step he took echoed, reminding him that he was far from home. The elder walked ahead with steady steps, his cloak dragging softly on the floor. The soldiers followed in silence, their glowing helmets turned away as if to show respect. The human felt small in their presence, a single man among warriors who could crush him without effort. And yet, they bowed to him as they bowed to the elder. The hall led into a wide chamber, filled with strange seats and flowing lights. At the center was a tall chair, not just a seat, but a throne of living metal. The elder lowered himself onto it, his eyes fixed on the human. "Sit," he commanded gently. Gesturing toward a smaller chair that formed from the floor itself, the human obeyed, his hands trembling as he sat. For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the hum of the ship. The elder leaned forward, his golden eyes shining. "You are wondering why this has happened to you," he said. The human nodded slowly. Unable to form words, the elder continued. "In my empire, we measure strength not only in battles won, but in the choices of the heart." He lifted a hand, and the glowing streams on the walls brightened, showing images of vast cities, starfleets, and alien armies. "You gave when you had no reason to give," the elder said. "You helped when no one else would." His voice echoed in the chamber like a judge passing a verdict. "That choice makes you more valuable than many who command fleets." The human shifted uneasily. He was just a traveler, just a man carrying a bag and a ticket. He had no power, no army, no throne. But the elder's words pressed against him like a weight. Refusing to let him hide in smallness, the elder raised his hand again, and the walls shifted. Now they showed images of battles, the roar of burning ships, the fall of planets, soldiers crying out. The human's chest tightened as he watched entire worlds collapse into fire. The elder's voice grew heavy. "Darkness spreads across the stars," he said. "And my empire stands at the edge of war." The human swallowed hard. This was too much. He had not asked to be part of any of this, yet the elder's eyes locked onto his, sharp and steady. "You must decide," the elder said slowly. "Remain as you are, a simple traveler. Stand with me, as a friend to my empire." The human froze, his mind spinning. Why him? Why would an elder, ruler of fleets, offer friendship to a single man who owned nothing but a bag and a kind heart? He wanted to refuse, to step back, to say no. But deep inside, he knew this was not a choice that could be refused. The elder was not asking, he was showing a path that once seen could never be unseen. The chamber door opened suddenly. A guard entered, kneeling quickly before the elder. He spoke in a sharp alien tongue, his voice urgent. The elder's eyes narrowed. "What is it?" The human asked, his voice trembling. The elder answered, his tone heavy. "Another faction has learned of my presence." The walls lit again, showing ships moving fast across space. Heading toward them, "They come to kill me," the elder said. "And anyone with me?" The human's heart pounded. This was not just an offer of friendship, was a step into danger. The elder stood tall, his golden eyes glowing brighter. "You helped me once," he said firmly. "Will you help me again?" The human looked at the throne, the soldiers, the walls full of burning stars. He thought of the old alien at the counter, weak and ignored. He thought of how simple kindness had brought him here. Now the same choice returned, but heavier, sharper. With lives tied to it, the human's hands shook as he whispered, "I am only one man." The elder stepped closer, his voice soft but fierce. "One man is enough," he said. "One act can move empires." The chamber grew silent again. The human's chest tightened, fear and doubt battling inside him, but the elder's words burned. One act had brought warships. One act had revealed an elder. Perhaps one act more could shape the fate of stars. The human raised his head slowly, his eyes still uncertain, but no longer empty. "I will not walk away," he said. The elder's lips curved into a faint smile, his golden eyes shining with approval. "Then your path begins," he said. The ship trembled as alarms rang again. The soldiers moved to their positions, weapons glowing. The human gripped the arm of his chair, his heart racing. This was no longer a simple journey. He had been given an offer, and by accepting it, he had stepped into the fire of destiny. The ship rose from the docking bay with a deep hum. The human felt the floor vibrate beneath his boots as the engines came alive. Through the windows, he saw the station grow smaller, until it was just a speck among the stars. The elder sat calmly on his throne, while soldiers stood at attention, silent like statues. The human sat near the edge of the chamber, his hands gripping the seat. Trying to steady himself, he had traveled before, but never in a ship like this. The walls pulsed with light. Like veins carrying energy through a living body, the air seemed to breathe, filling his chest with warmth that felt both strange and powerful. He could not shake the feeling that the vessel itself was alive, watching him, judging him. Every hum, every flicker of blue light felt like a heartbeat. A soldier approached and placed a silver band around his wrist. It glowed faintly and tightened until it fit perfectly. The human stared, confused. "What is this?" he asked. The elder answered from across the room, his voice calm. "It is a bond of passage. It allows you to walk freely among my ships." The human swallowed hard, unsure whether to feel honored or trapped. The ship moved faster, breaking into a slipstream of light. The stars outside stretched and bent, turning into long rivers of color. The human's eyes widened in awe. He had seen faster than light travel before, but never like this. This felt smoother, more alive, like riding inside the current of a great river in space. The elder raised his hand, and the walls shifted to show a vast map. Planets glowed like jewels scattered across the darkness. Each one carried marks, some green with peace, others red with war. The elder pointed to the red ones, his golden eyes narrowing. "These are worlds already burning," he said. "Enemies strike from the shadows, spreading fear and silence." The human leaned closer, his chest tightening. He saw entire systems marked in red. Planets he had only heard about in whispers now, fallen into war. "This is bigger than anything I imagined," he whispered. The elder nodded slowly, and it will come for your world too. Unless we stand together, the words hit hard. Earth, his home was far, quiet, and young compared to these empires. Could war really stretch across the stars and reach it? The human wanted to deny it, but deep inside he knew the truth. If such fleets existed, then no planet was beyond their reach. The elder's voice softened. "You are the first of your kind to step here," he said. "You have seen our strength. But you have also seen our need." He leaned closer, his presence heavy. "You may think you are small, but sometimes the smallest act begins the largest storm." The human's thoughts swirled. He thought of the moment at the ticket counter. A poor alien begging, ignored, humiliated, and he thought of how simple his choice had been to help, to give. Now that moment had become something far greater than he could control. The soldiers whispered among themselves. They called him the chosen outsider in their own tongue. Some looked at him with respect, others with suspicion he could feel. Their eyes on him, weighing him, judging whether he was worthy. Suddenly the ship jolted, alarms ringing across the chamber. The stars outside bent sharply, the slipstream breaking apart. The human grabbed his seat as the vessel shook. A soldier shouted, his voice sharp with warning. The elder's eyes narrowed. "They found us," he said, his voice cold and steady. Through the windows, dark shapes appeared, enemy ships, fast and sharp. Their hulls glowing red like burning embers. They moved in tight formations, weapons charging with fire. The elder stood, his cloak sweeping across the floor. "Prepare," he commanded. And the soldiers moved instantly, weapons glowing bright. The human's heart raced. He had never seen war, never stood in the path of fleets, but now he was here. Trapped inside a ship about to face fire, he wanted to run, to hide, to deny all of this, yet something stronger pushed against his fear. The elder's words echoed in his mind: "One act can move empires." The ship's walls lit with blue fire, engines roaring like thunder. Weapons extended from hidden compartments, glowing with living energy. The soldiers moved like a single body, calm and precise. The elder turned his golden eyes on the human. "One more time, you must see the truth with your own eyes," he said. "This is the galaxy you have stepped into." The human clenched his fists, his fear burning into something else: resolve. He did not know what role he was meant to play, but he knew one thing: there was no turning back. The journey had begun, and beyond this battle waited a destiny that would test him more than he could imagine. The ship shook as enemy fire lit. Up the darkness, red streaks of burning energy flashed across the windows. Striking the shields with thunderous force, the human gripped his seat, his knuckles white. He had never been this close to war. Never felt a ship tremble under the weight of destruction. The elder stood tall in the middle of the chamber, his golden eyes glowing like fire. He raised his hand, and the soldiers moved as one, calm and silent. The walls brightened, showing the enemy fleet dark, sharp vessels moving like wolves around them. The human's chest tightened. This was no skirmish. This was a hunt. And they were the prey. The elder spoke in his deep, steady voice. "Hold the line," he ordered. The ship answered with a hum. Blue energy rippling across its surface like a living shield. Weapons unfolded, glowing brighter than suns. The air filled with the sound of power charging, a sound that made the human's heart pound even faster. The first blast fired. A beam of blue fire tearing across space. It struck an enemy vessel, ripping it apart in silence. The human gasped as the pieces scattered into the void, but the enemy did not retreat. They came faster. Surrounding the elder's ship like shadows circling a flame, the human stood slowly, his hands trembling. He wanted to help, but he had nothing. No weapon, no training, nothing but fear. One soldier glanced at him with cold eyes. "Stay down." "Outsider," the soldier hissed, but the elder turned sharply, his voice cutting through the chaos. "No," he said. "Let him choose." The human froze. "Choose," he whispered, his voice shaking. The elder stepped closer, his gaze piercing. "This is your test," he said firmly. "To run or to stand." The ship rocked again. Alarms blaring, sparks flying across the chamber. The human's breath caught. In his chest, the elder continued, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. "Loyalty is not proven in peace, it is proven in fire." He pointed toward a control panel, lights flashing wildly. "The shields on the lower decks are failing." He said, "If they collapse, we will be torn apart." The human looked at the panel, then back at the elder. "You want me to fix that?" "I don't even understand this technology," he cried. The elder's eyes burned brighter. "You will understand," he said. "If your heart is true." The words made no sense, yet carried weight. The human's legs moved before his mind. Could stop them, he rushed toward the glowing panel, sparks flying at his face. Behind him, soldiers shouted as another blast shook the ship. One enemy vessel rammed into their shields, causing the floor to shake violently. The human pressed his hands against the console. Strange symbols shifted under his fingers. Glowing blue and red, he had no idea what they meant. But when he touched them, the silver band on his wrist pulsed with light. Suddenly, the symbols rearranged, shifting into patterns he could almost understand. As if the ship itself wanted him to succeed. "Now!" the elder shouted. The human slammed his hand down, and the panel erupted with light. Energy surged through the ship like a river unleashed. The shields flared brighter, holding back the enemy fire. The soldiers cheered in their tongue. Voices sharp with pride, the elder's golden eyes softened. "You see?" he said quietly. "The ship knows your choice." The human gasped for breath, sweat dripping from his forehead. He had no idea what he had just done, but he knew one thing: he had not run. He had chosen to stand. The battle raged on. Enemy vessels exploded one after another, torn apart by blue fire. The elder's ship moved with deadly grace, striking back with precision. Still, more enemies came. Waves of red fire crashing against the shields. The human felt every impact in his chest. Fear tried to crawl back into him, but he pushed it down, at last. The enemy fleet broke. The survivors turned and fled into the dark. The chamber grew quiet. Only the hum of the ship remained. The soldiers lowered their weapons, some staring at the human with new eyes, not as an outsider, but as one of them. The elder walked to him slowly. "You risked yourself for us," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "That is loyalty." The human's knees felt weak, but he stood tall. He had not done it for glory, not even for survival. He had done it because it felt right. The elder placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are no longer only a traveler," he said. "You are part of this story now." The human swallowed hard, his chest heavy with the truth. He knew there was no way back to the life he once had. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly. The battlefield now silent, but deep inside. The human understood this was not the end. This was only the beginning of a war that would reach farther than he could imagine. And he, by choice and by fate, was now tied to it. The battlefield behind them slowly faded into silence. The broken pieces of enemy ships drifted across the stars like burning ash. The elder's vessel sailed through the wreckage, its shields flickering but still alive. The human stood at the window, his eyes wide, his heart heavy. He had seen war now, not in stories, but with his own eyes, and he knew nothing would ever feel the same again. The elder remained calm on his throne, his golden eyes steady. The soldiers moved with quiet discipline, their respect for the human now clear in their glances. No one called him outsider anymore. They had seen his choice. seen him risk himself for them. That single act had changed the way they looked at him. But the human himself was not at peace. His hands still trembled. His breath still caught when he thought of the blasts tearing across the shields. He had survived, yes. But he felt the weight of what survival meant. He was part of something much greater than himself now. Something he could neither escape nor fully understand. The elder finally spoke. His voice deep and calm. "You have walked into fire and not turned away," he said. "Now the galaxy will know of you." The words sent a shiver down the human's spine. He had wanted no fame, no glory, only to travel quietly. But the elder's tone promised that quiet days were gone. The ship descended into a new system. Outside the window, the human saw a world glowing with lights. Cities spread across oceans and land. Giant towers reached toward the sky. Fleets of silver ships moved in patterns like birds. It was the elder's homeworld, a place of beauty and power. The soldiers straightened as they approached, their armor shining, their faces proud. The human swallowed hard. He realized he was about to be seen not just by soldiers, but by an entire empire. And all of this had begun because of one simple act. The ticket. He could not escape the thought I only bought a ticket, but destiny had turned that choice into something far greater. The ship landed in a massive hall, surrounded by thousands. Crowds of aliens filled the space, their eyes shining, their voices rising in chants. They were not chanting for the elder alone. They were chanting for the human too. He heard his name mixed with their strange words, echoing again and again. The elder lifted his hand and silence fell. He stepped forward with the human at his side. "This man," the elder said, his voice booming across the hall. "This human gave without thought of reward, and for that, he has changed the fate of stars." The crowd bowed as one, a sea of heads lowered in respect. The human's chest tightened, his mind spinning. He had never felt smaller, and yet never felt the weight of greatness so heavily. When the ceremony ended, the elder brought him to a quiet chamber there, away from the crowds. He spoke softly. "You must return to your world. For now," he said. The human blinked in surprise. "Return? After everything?" he asked. The elder nodded slowly, his golden eyes heavy with meaning. "Your people must be warned. They must be prepared. And only you can carry that truth." The human's throat tightened. He imagined Earth, still innocent, still untouched by fleets and wars. How would they believe him? How could he explain the fire he had seen, the empires that waited in the dark? The elder seemed to hear his doubt. "You do not need them to believe now," he said. "You only need them to remember when the time comes." The next day, a smaller vessel carried him back toward his homeworld. He sat quietly, staring out at the endless stars. Behind him, he left fleets, armies, and the elder who had called him more than a traveler. Ahead of him, Earth waited, calm, ordinary, unaware of what was coming when his ship finally landed. The human stepped out onto familiar soil. The air was the same, the sky was the same. But he was no longer the same. His eyes had seen too much. His heart carried too much. He walked among crowds of people who laughed, who hurried to work, who argued about small things. They had no idea how close the stars truly were. No idea that warships watched silently from far above. That night, he stood outside and looked at the sky. The stars glittered, innocent and cold. He whispered softly, his voice trembling but steady. "Everything changed. Because I bought one ticket, and though no one else heard." The words carried weight into the silence of the night, far above, hidden in the darkness. Alien ships watched quietly, protecting, waiting, guarding the human who had unknowingly become. The bridge between worlds, the story of his kindness had spread across the stars. Some called him a savior, others called him a threat. But one truth remained: his legacy had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same again.